Now, in a meeting a little earlier in the month, the G7 countries said that the sanctions and export controls against Russia, quote, do not and will not target essential exports of food and agricultural inputs to developing countries, end of quote. But nonetheless, African economies are already feeling the pinch with high prices and scarcity of agricultural-related items. Fertilizer is a good example of that. The UN Economic Commission for Africa is now supporting African countries in their push for emergency solutions right now. CGTN's Coletta Wanjohi spoke with the organization's executive secretary, Vera Songwe, in Dakar.
First of all, we joined the developed eyes and everybody from Russia to Ukraine to all of the world to say stop the war, right? I think that's the first thing. And from that perspective, I think all of us are focused on the war. I think the second one is, of course, this is a war that is happening so far away. Many Africans have probably never heard of Ukraine until the war began. But it is affecting us. We've done a study which is led by the Secretary General of the United Nations that shows, overseen by him, that shows that 109 countries are being affected negatively by this crisis, either on the food front, on the energy front, or on the fertilizer front, and of course the financial front. On the continent, we have about 39 countries that are being affected directly by two or more of the issues.
Shall we really get focus as a continent as we seek to recover economically at a time when the developed nations have their eyes on the Ukraine conflict?
I think what we're trying to do, of course, is to see whether Africa can come together again. The president of Senegal, who is the head of the African Union, called a meeting the other day to discuss precisely this issue, is how can Africa respond to this crisis. I think we're doing three things. One is, working with the rest of the world. There was a statement yesterday by the United States saying they support the United Nations effort to see whether we can bring some more wheat out of Ukraine. We also need to see whether we can bring fertilizer out of Russia, of course. So we're trying to create corridors, humanitarian corridors. Normally when we create humanitarian corridors, we create them for people. But now we're trying to create them to get some of this grain and some of this fertilizer out. So those are some concrete things that we would like the rest of the world to join us in doing. And I think the US statement yesterday that they support the UN in doing this is important, and hopefully the Europeans and the global community can come together to ensure that happens. We're seeing wheat prices are going up. India is doing an export ban. Indonesia is doing an export ban. That's another thing that we would like for the international community to focus on. So it's not resources, it's just policy. We know that with export bans, the prices become even more important, go up, there's more scarcity, and so that penalizes Africa even more.
Beyond just external funding, you the experts are saying that it is time for Africa to focus more on our domestic resource mobilization.
I'm very encouraged. There is a lot that we can do better, but there is a lot that we're already doing. Over the last 2 days, we've heard from the Minister of Finance of Egypt. We heard from the Minister from Zimbabwe, and they've all levied new taxes. They're all doing a lot of work in terms of how they can raise more resources. And we're seeing that through digitization, we can actually get to, one of the things when we talk about domestic resource mobilization, it's not necessarily to increase the rate, but it's to broaden the base and make it more efficient. And essentially, we are seeing with digitization that countries are doing that, and they're getting, 2-3% more percentage points of GDP into their tax bracket. So I think this is very important. We can do it. I think it just takes determination. There may be some challenges. We heard from the Minister of Ghana as well. He's put in place an e-levy, which took a very long time to sort of socialize with the populations. But I think well targeted, as we've seen with what Ghana is doing, making sure that, of course, depending on how you do it, it can be regressive, which means that the poor get affected the most, because the poor are the ones who use a lot of sort of transfers. But if you have a cutoff rate below which you don't tax those who are doing the transfers, then actually you can, there is a sort of higher class or higher segment of your population that can actually give you a lot of resources, and where you can catch a lot of the transactions going back and forth. We're also now looking at other issues around the VAT, or the value-added tax, to see how we can again use digitization to be able to see whether we can increase the tax basket.